Hey again, everybody. It's Thursday. It's a little later in the day. I was hoping to get this done earlier. Trying to get these on a regular schedule so I have them posted at the same time every week. But it's one of those things that every time I try to do that, things come up, and I always end up having these things later in the day than I would like them to be. But at least I'm getting them done, so I've got that going for me. So once again, my name is Scott. This is Comic Book Hangover. It's Thursday, and as I do every Thursday, here are the books that I picked up this week, and got one bonus book. So I'm going to be able to talk about real quickly a book from my collection, because I've got 12 spots on the wall. Picked up 11 books this week. Actually, I picked up 10 books this week. One of them I won from my LCS. I'll explain that one when I get to it. So, as I've been doing the past couple of weeks, we're going to start with the reprints. So this week I picked up True Believers. It's part of the Iron Man 2020. It's first appearance of Jocasta. This is a reprint of Avengers number 162. Jocasta is one of my favorites. One of my favorite characters. I've always liked it when she shows up, especially when she's with Aaron, when she's with Machine Man, because their relationship has always been kind of interesting to me. Doesn't get a lot of play, she doesn't get a lot of attention, but with this Iron Man 2020 thing going on, she seems to be more into the spotlight. So there's also a nice Ultron cover there too. Ultron's one of my favorite Avengers villains when he's done right. I like the comic book version of him more than the movie version. The movie version was kind of really watered down and just, I don't know, I really didn't care for it. So that was the only True Believer that came out this week that I picked up. So from DC, got a couple of dollar comics. Flash Rebirth number 1 and New Teen Titans reprint. Actually, I always kind of like this cover as well. It's a nice cover. I like that. So those were the reprints I picked up. So not really not much spectacular reprint information there, but that's pretty cool. So the next book I want to show you is one my local comic shop here in Jackson, Michigan. There you go. I kind of just doxed myself. Whatever, it's fun. Every week, and I know I've talked about this before. Every week they have a raffle where you buy certain books, usually first issues, and then they have a selection of about 10 titles that they pick as well. That if you buy any of these books, you get a ticket. The ticket you can put into a raffle to win one of I believe like they do about 10 or 12 every week. And then after towards the close of business on Wednesday, they do a drawing, and you have an opportunity to win a book. It's always a variant cover. Sometimes there are variants for that week. Sometimes there are variants from the last week or two. But it's always something cool. So this week I went in for 2 books. There was the first issue of Plunge from the DC Dark Label Hill Comics miniseries that debuted this week. There was the one with the shark on the cover. It's a pretty cool cover. I did that one, and I did the Art Germ variant for Thor number 1 that came out a little while ago. And the one I won is the Art Germ Thor number 1. That is a very sharp cover. You can kind of see the reflection of all the stuff on the other. It's behind the camera. Whatever, doesn't matter. There you go. That is a really sharp cover. There's also a good book too. Donny Cates has been doing a pretty good job with Thor, just as epic and big scale as his Guardians of the Galaxy book was. So I'm going to be sticking with that one for the foreseeable future. So moving on to the new books that I picked up this week. We're going to start, I got a couple of first issues. So we're going to start with Plunge. This is the aforementioned book that this is the regular cover. I may grab that variant cover in the next week or two because it is pretty sharp. But this is it's written by Joe Hill, who's also writing the he's also doing, what is it, A Basket Full of Heads. And Basket Full of Heads, I'm really enjoying that book. So when I saw he was writing this one as well, I figured, what the heck, why not? I want to give this a shot. And this is another one. Another miniseries, and just like Basket Full of Heads, I don't know why I'm having a hard time remembering that title, but just like Basket Full of Heads, it is kind of a slow burn. It's a slow build story, and works really well. I mean, it's almost like reading what would be the treatment for a movie, for an upcoming horror film. But Plunge, can't really say too much about what it's about. There's a ship that disappeared some 40 years ago. It suddenly shows up again. It's sending out a distress signal. So you have a group of people that are going to the boat to try to figure out what's going on. And got an interesting cast of characters. a lovely little mystery with just a hint of horror to it. So I'm thinking that with the next issue, we're really going to start ramping up the horror element of the story. So I'm hoping so. But regardless, if you enjoyed Joe Hill's work on Basket Full of Heads, you should definitely check this one out, because this is equal. Plus, it's got art by Stuart Immonen, who's one of my favorite artists of all time. He did an amazing job in one of my favorite books, but in the last 20 years or so that Marvel did, called Next Wave. Great series. So the other number one I picked up this week is one I've been looking forward to. Deceased Unkillables #1. I always grab these variant covers for it. I grabbed these. This is Medina, whatever. Great cover, great art. It'll match the main Deceased series that I picked up. So this series here, it takes place during the first Deceased miniseries, and it focuses on the villains. You got a group of villains, and you're seeing what they went through and how they reacted to this situation. I mean, we saw in Deceased, we saw the heroes trying to save everybody and losing each other hand over fist and trying to save as many people, and they wound up leaving at the end of the story. Sorry, spoilers. This here shows what happened and how did the people who normally would be out for themselves and would probably take advantage of the situation, how do they actually react to it? And it's not what you would expect. I mean, they're really not trying to take advantage of the situation on the surface. I'm sure they're planning and then trying to figure out, well, this is, if I position myself in this way, I'll be able to take full advantage of it. But really, who wants to rule a dead world, if you really think about it? So, very good. If you enjoyed the main Deceased miniseries that came out last year, you definitely want to pick this one up. It's a lot of fun. And moving on, from the first issues to the final issues, Elvira #12. Final issue for this series. Now, they do a wonderful little teaser and at the end of this where they tease that they're going to have more, Dynamite's going to have more Elvira stuff, which I'm very happy about, but she's going to have a crossover with somebody. They tease it to the point where they announce that she's going to have a crossover, but then Elvira cuts them off and says, no, let's surprise everybody. So we don't know who the crossover is. All I know is I'm happy I'm going to be getting more Elvira, because this has been one of my favorite, not really top of the stack books, but I guess you could call it a guilty pleasure book. And this has been my guilty pleasure book for the past year, and I've really enjoyed it. Love the covers. This was the cover that I definitely wanted to get this time. Glad I was able to get it. So Elvira, if you're a fan of just cheeky, cheesy, campy humor, and she also does the fourth wall break. She's actually been doing that for a while. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark is definitely something for you. Moving on, we're going to do penultimate issue. I love that word. Invader Zim #49. I'm still behind on this, but I think with it when I get issue 50 or before issue 50 actually comes out, I'm going to go back and read the issues of this that I need to read still. I think I'm maybe like 5 or 6 issues behind, but I get it all caught up. That way when issue 50 comes out, which is going to be a double-sized issue, final issue for the series, I'll have the whole run read. And I might even go through and reread it again. I also grabbed one of my favorite new books outside, not really new anymore. It's been out for about a year, over a year now. Middle West #15. Really not much more that anybody could say about this book. It's still an amazing read. In this one here, you've got the traveling circus, or the traveling troupe that Abel had befriended, are getting together and they're going to save Abel and his friend. So you've got a group of people who are really not, I don't think they're really prepared for what they're getting themselves into, but Abel's one of them, his friend is one of them, so they're going to go and do what they can to save these kids and get them out of the situation that they're in. And it is still a great series, great art, love the covers. Actually, this cover here, it's a lot more ominous than what it actually is inside the book, and that's what I love about it. Moving on, HeMan and the Masters of the Multiverse #4. Great cover. I'm surprised this actually wasn't a variant cover. I'm really surprised this was a main cover for this book. Not even sure if they did any variants for this one. I haven't seen any, so I didn't see any solicited. I didn't see any down at my LCS. So as far as I know, this is the only cover they did, which is kind of amazing that they have this cover for the main cover. This seems like it'd be a variant, but in this issue here, part of the multiverse that they're going through, they end up in the original Filmation HeMan and the Masters of the Universe world. So it's really kind of cool to see, that sort of squeaky clean version of HeMan dealing with a dark violent version of He-Man as well. Plus, Keldar really gets he makes a change in this one. At the end of this issue, there's a major change with him. So I'm really curious to see if he's still going to be the good guy that he is, or if this change if that's going to start him on the road to be just like every other Skeletor that we've seen in the multiverse. But if this is just a fun book. This is sort of like the Elvira series, where there's really nothing major. It's not really earth shattering, but it's fun. Every once in a while, you do have to have that book that's just fun. Not everything has to be a big key issue or a major first appearance or a cameo appearance. Sort of like this one here. Everybody's talking about this because of the first cameo appearance of this character Punchline, who's Joker's new main squeeze, sort of replacing Harley Quinn, who I refer to now as Hot Topic Harley, because I don't really care for the way that she is now. I like the old school Harley. The way she is now, she's just, I don't know. Moving on from that, but this continues. John, or it's I'm not even sure how to pronounce this last name. Tenyan the Fourth continues his run. Once again, I started buying this series because I read his Something Is Killing the Children series from Boom Studios, and I absolutely love that series. And I heard he was taking over Batman. And I thought, well, hey, as good as he does on this horror aspect of writing comics, I want to see how he does with the superhero stuff. I'm a better superhero than Batman. And so I figured I'd pick out the first issue. I really enjoyed it. I didn't think I'd do too much more than that, but let's pick up the next issue. So that was issue 86. We're on issue 89 now, and I'm still very much enjoying this, especially with what in this issue here, aside from the whole Punchline thing, the small little part at the beginning of the issue with Penguin, who was gravely injured at the end of the previous issue, and he ends up at a hospital. It just sort of his interaction with the people that he's going to be relying on to save his life, and the demands that he makes it's kind of interesting. It's neat to see these characters in a very different situation than what we've seen them before. Now the villains in this one, they are very much running for their lives. You got Riddler, Joker, Catwoman, and Penguin. They're in a situation that that's a strong possibility that they may not survive. I mean, Penguin almost met his end. So it's a really good series. It's been a lot of fun reading this book. I'm going to be continuing this. It's actually, as I've said, I think with the last issue that came out, it is now on my pull list. So I'm going to be collecting this and reading this series until issue 100, because I think at issue 100 DC is going to screw everything up again, do another reboot or relaunch their universe, and then everything is going to start over from another #1 issue. I have no interest in another Batman #1. I have no interest in reading a Batman comic where it's not Bruce Wayne as Batman. So until then, I am enjoying the heck out of this series. It's definitely a top of the stack book. A lot of fun art, fun story, great sort of twist on the villains still trying to be villains, but also kind of running for their lives. So those were all the new books that I picked up this week. So with the extra spot that I have on my wall this week, I figured I can do sort of pick a book from my collection that I don't think I've really talked about before on my channel. So this right here is the very first issue of Amazing Spider-Man I ever bought. And it's still the same copy. I bought this back in the 90s. And I got it because Ghost Rider was the character that got me into comics. And I had no idea when I started collecting that Danny Ketch Ghost Rider wasn't the first Ghost Rider. I had no idea about Johnny Blaze. But then, because I would go down to my LCS every week, I would talk to the owner of the LCS. I would talk to the other people that were down there, and I would learn more about these characters. And I learned about Johnny Blaze, and then in the Ghost Rider series, Johnny Blaze showed up. It's like, this guy, who's this guy? And I'm asking questions, getting my pieces put together for this great big Ghost Rider puzzle. So going through and looking for back issues and other appearances for him, I came across this issue of Amazing Spider-Man. It's issue 274. It's during Secret Wars 2, and in this one here, the Beyonder tries to take over Mephisto's realm, and they kind of get into this arrangement where each one can pick sort of an avatar or a champion. They would face each other, and whichever person won, the entity Beyonder or Mephisto that they represented, they would take over Mephisto's realm. So since it's Amazing Spider-Man, Mephisto decided the only person he could pick is the Amazing Spider-Man because it's Spider-Man and it's his book. The Beyonder chose Zarathos, who was the demon that possessed Johnny Blaze back in the 70s and 80s and made him the Ghost Rider. So between, if my memory is correct on this, between the ending of Johnny Blaze's Ghost Rider series, which is Ghost Rider number 81, and his appearance in the 90s Ghost Rider series, this was the only appearance of the demon Zarathos in that time span. It's about 10, 15 year span, somewhere in there. So I heard about that, hunted it down, was able to find it at my LCS Nostalgia Inc. in Jackson, Michigan, and was able to buy it, and this became the first Amazing Spider-Man book that I ever bought. And it really kind of was my introduction to the comic book version of that character. So that is that. Nice stack of books. So I'm going to toss everything up on the wall and call it a week, I guess. So let's just go over and check and see what the wall looks like. See you in a minute.